Hi, thanks for tuning in. It's Stuart here, and I'm going to be looking at Apollo 13 and how does it, let's supposing the moon landings never happened, where does Apollo 13 fit into the whole scheme of faked moon landings and faked failures as well? So let's say the moon landings never happened, that Kennedy set this goal. The Americans realized that they weren't going to really send anybody into space to the moon. There was going to be no moon landing. They realized that at a certain point. But because Kennedy had made this promise, they decided to go through with the whole thing and fake it and make it look as if it really happened. Okay, I mean, that's not entirely implausible, particularly in the Cold War when it was important for the superpowers to prove that they were technologically superior. But I suppose my question would be, though I would have many questions, of course, but one question would be Apollo 13 was a technological failure. There was an explosion on board, and let's suppose the moon landings really happened and that it really was a failure and it was an absolutely amazing technological feat of survival that they got back. That's the narrative. But let's supposing that the moon hoaxes are real and that none of this actually happened. What do you suppose, as part of the entire conspiracy, how did they cook up Apollo 13? Well, let's suppose that they've decided they're going to go through with not just one moon landing, but several, and then eventually close it down and say, well, the public's lost interest. We're going to move on to something else. In other words, yeah, fake space shuttle missions as well. But before that happens, they sit round a table and say, well, look, let's be careful. Let's try and make this whole thing look real. And if we're going to make it look real, we need to have a failure. We can't just have one success after another. Otherwise, nobody will believe us. So they decide to go for Apollo 13. I mean, 13 is an unlucky number, right? So what we'll do is, as per normal, we won't send the astronauts into space. We'll have it look as if they're getting into the Saturn V command module, and we'll just make it look as if this whole mission is going ahead. We'll have the Saturn V launch, and of course, it won't really go into space. It will just simply uh, come down somewhere and splash in the ocean, and we'll retrieve it, but nobody will know. And all the time, Jim Lovell and his companion astronauts will be kept in a holding hotel or some kind of secure place, and obviously they will be in on the whole thing. And their families. What about the families? This is the thing. Jim Lovell's wife was biting her nails. We've got footage of her looking very, very concerned. Her husband is possibly going to die. There are thousands of people standing in Times Square and other public places in America when the uh, when the module finally makes its descent, the capsule makes its descent, and they lose radio contact. There are obviously images of concerned uh, well-wishers stood in Times Square and other places around the world waiting for this radio silence to be broken so they can know that obviously they did survive. It's quite an elaborate hoax, I must admit, particularly with all the footage of people. And I suppose if they really did truly believe that the lives of these astronauts were in danger, then they would be stood there looking very, very concerned. So yeah, I suppose it's possible, but obviously Lovell and the other astronauts would have known that it was a hoax, and they somehow managed to play this whole thing out in front of their families as well. Or did the families know? Did Mrs. Lovell know that her husband was not actually going into space, was not actually going to the moon at all, so there was no danger, there was nothing to be concerned about, and she'd simply been told by the CIA or the American Secret Services, look, this is what's going on, never breathe a word of this, otherwise not only you will die, but your entire family will die, etc., etc. On the other hand, you will be richly rewarded if you go along with it. I find that kind of hard to believe in a way because I mean, despite all the threats of death and etc., I would have thought somebody would spill the beans. Somebody would somehow get word out that, yeah, this was a hoax. and the the Americans wouldn't be able to rely on everybody keeping their mouths shut. So how would they deal with that? It's such a difficult kind of conspiracy to perpetrate, which is why I don't believe in it. But I'm just trying to rationalize the moon hoaxer case that Apollo 13 must have been part of the grand scheme of things, and all the other landings, etc. Who knows? I mean, let's supposing the landings never happened and they decided to stage Apollo 13 because people had lost interest in the moon landings. And what better way to get them reinterested than by creating this sort of fake drama that three astronauts could lose their lives? And yeah, I mean, it's not implausible. I mean, look, what's implausible and impossible is that the Earth is not a globe. I mean, we know it because of the science, but the claim that the moon landings were faked, Apollo 13 was faked, and everything else, and all the Russian missions, etc., etc. I mean, it's a heck of a deception to pull it off, with absolutely nobody spilling the beans or even leaving any letters behind with lawyers. Nobody of any note actually supports this theory, but still, it's more credible than that the Earth is not a globe. Okay, well, that's it. I've left no comments, but I just thought I would raise this. It would have to be one heck of a really elaborate scam to pull this whole thing off. And yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't believe in it, but I'm just trying to get into the conspiracy theorist mindset about why people do believe in these things and what they say to Apollo 13 and some of the other events that happened in the build up to the launching of the Saturn V in 1969 and the missions after that. How do you explain the missions after that? It's so elaborate. It's so elaborate. Hundreds of thousands of people involved, hundreds of billions of dollars spent on this project. Yeah, I mean, the Saturn V is there. You can go and see it. There's film of it lifting off into the stratosphere, and it's one heck of a claim that these moon landings never happened. Okay, well, thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.